the shooting range. All aboard the ship. The closed beta testing of the Naval Battles has started, and as you might have guessed, we're including this part of the game in our show. In the next episodes, we'll be more balanced between different modes. But today, we're diving head on. In this episode, the USS Cowell, a battleship that saw half of the world, the best torpedo bombers for naval battles. Hotline. The developers answer questions that you've left in the comments. But first, let's start with one of the leaders among the destroyers, the Z-20 Karl Galster. What we have here, ladies and gentlemen, is a 1936 type destroyer. It was put on active duty in 1939, powered through the whole war, and after 1945 ended up in the Soviet Navy. What can we say? Life finds a way. You'll be able to get your hands on the Z-20 version, manufactured in 1945. The only difference between the Z-20 and the capital version of the Karl Galster is the AA guns. The Z-20 has a much more powerful AA gun battery. In terms of gameplay, this gives the Z-20 multiple advantages. It can deal with an enemy flyer faster and more easily. Secondly, if there are no places in sight, you can absolutely use the AA guns on enemy ships. A 37mm single-barrel cannon and the 22mm caliber rounds could shred any light armored vehicle. A couple of barrages can sink any lesser ship in no time. When it comes to main armaments, the Z-20 is a pure joy. It comes equipped with 5 128mm cannons with great reloading speed. Just a flashy 3.6 seconds. Those babies can put down any artillery ship or even a light cruiser. If you like your guns even bigger than that, no worries. The engineers have got you. The Z-20 has 2 trainable torpedo mounts with shared allowance of ammunition of 8 G7A torpedoes with the strike radius of 6 kilometers and a speed of 43.7 knots or 81 kilometers per hour. By the way, while we're on the subject of speed, the ship itself isn't much slower than its torpedoes, 38 knots or 78 kilometers an hour. Not bad at all for a vessel with the sum displacement of just over 2,800 tons. In terms of gameplay, it means that the Z-20 can be one of the first ships to begin capturing points. But, alas, it's not all sunshine and roses. Of course, the Z-20 has its weak spots. The armor, for example, is less than remarkable. A couple of lucky shots to the hull and your ammunition storage will ignite like a Roman candle. You'll probably survive thanks to the numerous crew of 323 sailors. But it will be 100% unpleasant to say the least. And keep in mind that the Z-20 doesn't really have anything else in terms of weaponry. No mines, no rockets, no depth charges. At least, you can still use the ESS. That will help you evade approaching enemies 5 times per match. But that's it. So, how do you play the Z-20 Karl Galster? If you're engaged in a long-distance fight, try to expose your side to the enemy. Yeah, you'll be more vulnerable that way and easier to hit, but this manner of positioning allows the Z-20 to use 5 cannons simultaneously instead of just 2 if you face opposing forces head-on. In close combat, maneuver constantly and approach the enemy combatants diagonally. Use torpedoes at a pinch. If a bunch of small ships surround you in shallow waters, don't hesitate to use supplementary weapons. You definitely don't want to catch a stray torpedo while you're at it. And of course, you must always be on the move. A stationary Z-20 is a dead Z-20. Doesn't matter who you're dealing with. And now, let's remember a colorful story of the brave USS Cowell. fleet destroyers, surprisingly, operate within squadrons. Each becomes useless without the other. The US Navy has learned this simple truth the hard way in the Pacific Ocean theater. The USS Cowell was one of the 175 Fletcher-class ships that the USA manufactured between 1941 and 1945. It wasn't the one and only. Neither was it especially problematic. Just another workhorse for the fleet, mostly just escorting the big ships. It began its duty in 1944, when the fight was already well underway. The US Navy deployed this shiny new destroyer in the Pacific Ocean, where it saw action in many places. The islands of Saipan, Guam, Palau, and Truk Lagoon. These wonderful vistas still haunt the US Marines in their nightmares. The crew of the USS Cowell put out fires on Allied ships, defended them from enemy aviation with its AA guns, covered the attacks of land troops, and frequently saved shot-down pilots. In other words, the USS Cowell and its crew served the fleet to the best of their abilities. The Battle of Okinawa was its true moment of glory. During the night of October 14, the Japanese air fleet dealt a massive blow to the USS Houston and the SS Canberra heavy cruisers. The Cowell was on the defensive the whole night long. While this first crippled division was towed back to safety, we can thank the Fleet Admiral Halsey and his sense of humor for a catchy name like that. Thanks to the courage of the USS Cowell, both ships were saved and subsequently were able to return to action. For its service in the Okinawa area, the whole crew of the USS Cowell got the Presidential Unit Citation. After the war, the military put the ship on hold and were planning to scrap it entirely, but the Korean War began. The destroyer set sail back into the fray, but barely participated in the actual fighting. Mostly, it just trailed after the USS Missouri, watching the Korean land being ravaged by the Missouri's monstrous cannons. After that conflict, the USS Cowell was sold to Argentina and adopted a new name, AIA Almirante Storni. Under that name, the ship made the news one last time. In 1976, Argentina and Great Britain were in dispute about the Falkland Islands, as both countries saw them as their property. In December, the English research vessel Shackleton, named after Sir Ernest Shackleton, commanded by his son, Edward Shackleton. Wow, that's what we call lineage. Anyway, the Shackleton approached the Falkland Islands. The Argentinians were not amused by this amazing hidden humor, so they sent the USS Cowell to intercept the trespasser. On February 4, 1976, the ship fired its main cannons for the last time, which was enough of a display to scare the Shackleton away. This incident sparked the new war, but the USS Cowell wasn't around for it. The brave destroyer, a recipient of 11 battle honors for World War II and 2 for the Korean War, was peacefully dismissed from duty in 1982. In all its years of service, the USS Cowell didn't take any serious damage at all. And now, let's see how one should fight the ships if one doesn't want to leave his aircraft. Since we launched the closed beta of Naval Battles, the torpedo-bombers have become a lot more popular among our players. Well, no wonder. There are few ships that can withstand a direct hit of a torpedo, not to mention 2. So far, only 2 countries take part in the naval action, the USA and Germany. So today we only discuss the tech from their aviation trees. The first obvious choice is the TBD-1 Devastator. It isn't the fastest aircraft ever, and it can only carry 1 torpedo. But given its small size, it's very effective at BR 1.7. Moreover, this deck-based bomber has a 12.7mm forward-facing Browning machine gun, and you can have a lot of fun with it shooting the enemy torpedo boats after you get rid of your payload. Its exact opposite is the PBY-5A flying boat, the Catalina. It's huge, it has no forward-facing armament, and it's even slower than the Devastator. But it carries 2 torpedoes at once. Life hack: if you want to live, make sure you have a couple of friendly fighters keeping you safe. The Catalina has a lot of turrets, but it can't take a lot of enemy fire for long. Going further, we have the first German torpedo bomber in our list, the Heinkel HE-111H6 at BR 2.7. This is a true battle classic. 2 torpedoes, 2 engines, no forward-facing armament, and the ability to carry the Fritz X instead of the torpedoes. Its American counterpart is the B-34, with only 1 torpedo. One would say that the German bomber is better because it has more torpedoes, but the B-34 is a lot faster. 538 kph against 400. It has some forward-facing guns, so this is the choice you need to make depending on your game style. Up next, at BR 3.0, we have the Italian SM-79AS that ended up in the German tech tree. It's faster than the Heinkel and only has 1 torpedo to carry, but it also has some guns in the front. 2 of them, to be exact, 12.7mm each. It also has some defensive armament as well. As for the Americans, they have a whole bunch of torpedo bombers on tiers 2 and 3. We recommend looking closer at these amazing fighters, the F6F5 and the F6F5N. Each of those can carry 1 torpedo. Also at BR 4.0, there's a great deck-based bomber called the BTD-1 destroyer. It's quite small, but not only does it carry 2 torpedoes at once, it also has 2 20mm AN-M2 cannons. Lastly, if you got to Tier 4, we recommend taking the German DO-217M1 torpedo bomber. 2 torpedoes, no forward-facing armament, but its speed is a whole 560 kph. In addition, it has as many as 5 turrets to keep itself safe from enemy fighters. Get ready for the traditional last part of our show, Hotline. Developers answering questions from the comments. The first question was asked by a user called Do Not Even Try. Can you talk about the story of the P-51? And also, will you ever add the P-51B? It's the last one in the family that we don't have. Hey there. With the P-51B, we can't promise you anything, mate. As for the story of this aircraft, we'll definitely try that. The problem is, it'll take about 5 episodes to cover it all. We'll see what we can do. Disguise asks,
will World War mode have a closed beta like the ships?
Hi there, mate. We're working very actively on this mode and doing a lot of internal tests, so we can't really tell you much about how we're going to release it to the players right now. We'll announce everything concerning this mode in due time. All the news, as always, will be on our site. Then there's a question from a user called Wallaby HD. Hi, the Renault FT-17 would be a great tank for the French as a Tier 1 tank, light and armed with a 37mm cannon. Hi mate, it would, but we're not going to add World War I tanks into the game, at least for now. Another question today was sent by Zeleaf. Will you add spaceships? Well, if it's not enough for you to climb to space in your Spitfire, like we've suggested some episodes ago, try checking out our game about space and all that. It's called Star Conflict. And the last, very serious message was sent by a player called You're Done For. First Thunder show I actually watched the whole thing instead of skipping to the hotline. That feeling when you're kinda glad they like you, but they still confuse the shooting range with Thunder Show. That's it for today, but feel free to write your questions in the comments below. We do read them all, and you might see some of them answered in the next episode. If you like what we're doing, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. See you on the shooting range.